Welcome back to the Snow Point Cast. Today we're going to be taking a look at a deck from the 2019 Worlds format called Barrel Roll. It's actually a deck that I made myself. I played it at the Open at 2019 Worlds. I didn't do that well, but I think it's a really fun deck. And yeah, so let's get right into it. So starting off with 4 Elgyem. Elgyem evolves into Beheeyem. Beheeyem's your main attacker. So it's got 60 HP, which is pretty tiny. This deck is kind of glass cannon based. If you get disrupted in any way, it can be really bad. But luckily there's not a ton of disruption cards in the format. So you play those to play 4 Beheeyem. So Beheeyem's got 80 HP, Psychic type, and then you're only going to be using Mysterious Noise, which is a second attack. So for 3 colorless, it does 90, and then shuffle this Pokemon, all cards attached, into the deck. And then your opponent can't play item cards during your opponent's next turn. So this is actually really good because a lot of the decks in this format rely on item cards to set up because there's no item lock in the format other than Beheeyem, really. And Beheeyem is quote-unquote not that good. I think it's definitely got some potential, but it was definitely one of the written off cards from the set because it's kind of difficult to set up and you can only attack with triple acceleration energy, although it does return to the deck with the Beheeyem, which is kind of why the deck works, is because usually it gets discarded at the end of the turn, but because Beheeyem's effective attack finishes before the end of your turn, you get to keep your triple accelerations energy as well. Also, the reason why the deck's called Barrel Roll is because you do a barrel roll into the deck when you attack with Beheeyem. And also, I was like, oh, we could call it Bet Arrow, like Beheeyem Aerodactyl, because Aerodactyl is another one of the cards. And I thought about Star Fox 64 when Peppy goes, do a barrel roll. And I was like, that kind of sounds like Bet Arrow. I don't know, kind of stupid, but yeah, that's kind of why the deck is named the way it is named. Kind of silly throwback. Shout out to anyone who knows Star Fox 64. So you're playing 4 Jirachi as well. Jirachi is one of your setup Pokemon, 70 HP, Stellar Wish. Once during your turn, this Pokemon is your active Pokemon. You can make it asleep and look at the top 5 cards of your deck, take a trainer card you find there, and then put it in your hand. So a great setup card, just being able to find your pieces. Also really good for thinning. You're going to want to have, like, eventually the point of the deck is to discard almost, or rather your entire deck, so that you can get to a point where you're Beheeyeming. Your deck is a Beheeyem, an Elgyem, and a triple acceleration energy. You can Zebstrika to draw into those cards, and then just keep the loop going because you're keeping an infinite deck, so you can never really deck out. So you're also playing a 1-2 Zebstrika line, starting off with 1 Blitzle. So the Blitzle's just got, it's the 70 HP one, it's just better because it's got 70 HP. And then you're also playing 2 Zebstrika. So Zebstrika's got 110 HP, and Sprint is the ability that you use this guy for. So once you're in turn for your attack, you may discard your hand and then draw 4 cards. So it's the main draw engine of the deck outside of Jirachi. It just lets you discard your hand, thin out those cards that you don't really care about once you've been set up and going, and you can get to that board state where you only have a Beheeyem and other Elgyems and Beheeyem so that you can, attach a triple acceleration and just keep the loop going. This Zebstrika is really key to that strategy because it lets you discard cards from your deck to be able to get there. Just playing 1 Ditto. This is the best card in the deck. Ditto Prism Star is amazing. So 40 HP, which is really low, but Almighty Evolution essentially says Ditto can evolve into any stage 1 Pokemon in your deck, which is a lot of Pokemon. That's why you play some really weird lines in this deck, and it's because Ditto allows you to play those lines. So one of them is the 1-2 Zebstrika line. You only really need 1 Zebstrika, but if you prize your Blitzle, a lot of your game plan kind of just goes out the window. So you're kind of able to just go 1 Ditto. If you really need a Ditto into Zebstrika, you can do that. You're also playing 1 Goomy. Goomy's got 40 HP, Dragon type, which is nice because Mysterious Treasure can grab it. Sticky Memory is the ability. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your opponent's attacks cost 1 colorless more. So great to be able to have that stall for your opponent, especially having something to promote into after you attack with the Beheeyem. You kind of want to slow your opponent down. You're item locking them as well, making their attacks cost a little bit more. Just kind of adds to that disruption strategy of Beheeyem. So also playing a 1-1 Alolan Ninetales line. So Alolan Vulpix rather, 60 HP, water type, Roar for free. It's one of the only basic attacks that you can use in the deck. Your opponent switches their active Pokemon with one of their bench Pokemon. So not really useful, but the only one that you can attack with. So we play that one. This card, however, very useful and sometimes just wins you outright matchups. Alolan Ninetales, 110 HP, Luminous Barrier, prevent all effects of attack, including damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's GX and Pokemon EX. So mainly, this is a really hard counter against Zekrom, Pikarom, because they only play 1 Zapdos, and when you're item locking them, the majority of their, not only their is almost all of their Pokemon search. I don't think they play any Pokemon search that isn't item based. So when you're locking them with Beheeyem, you just promote a Ninetales, and unless they have, you know, a crazy combo, they're not able to get it off. Also, a lot of their attackers are really heavy to retreat. So in order for Zapdos to even be doing decent, I think it does 90. I think it's 20 plus 70 if it switches active. I might be wrong. It's been a long time since I played this format, but actually I can just check. Let's check because we have Pikarom right here. Yeah. So it does, yeah, 10 plus 70. So it does 80 actually. Which is not a knockout on Alolan Ninetales either. So they can attack you once, and then as soon as they attack you with the Zapdos, you just start promoting different things. You just start promoting a Goomy or an Aerodactyl, something that your opponent can't, you know, really have an impact with Zapdos. And then your Alolan Ninetales is 7 on the bench. Once you take out a Zapdos, unless they play 2, you just win the game because they can't attack your Alolan Ninetales with their Pokemon. So at least you're tying. You might not be able to like win if they knock out all your bench Pokemon, but they'll never be able to fully like kill your board because they can't tackle a Ninetales. So Ninetales, great card, definitely a good card in other matchups too, but Pikarom is the matchup that it's really, really great in. Also playing 2 Aerodactyl GX. So Aerodactyl GX, fighting type, 210 HP, which is pretty tanky. Primal Winds is the ability, so as long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your opponent's basic Pokemon's attacks cost 1 colorless more. So honestly, initially, you could maybe change this list up a little bit because I didn't have Goomy in here initially. I didn't play Goomy at DC in the open. I should have, but I didn't. But I played 3 Aerodactyl instead. The reason Aerodactyl is really nice is because it has free retreat, so you don't have to have a escape board on it. And one of the things that this card actually does really well against a deck that came out at Worlds is Stall. Oranguru Stall, Oranguru Pidgeotto is a really powerful deck, and not only being able to prevent them from attacking, having a 2-cost attack, they only play a couple energy in their deck. I think they're just a couple recycle energy. So being able to stall them from attacking is really great, but the free retreat is super important because if you don't have these cards against Stall, what Stall can do is they Faba and they Lost Zone your escape boards until you're out of escape boards, which is absolutely possible. They can definitely do that. Then once they, you know, Faba, Lusamine for Faba, ditch all your escape boards, you can't retreat your Goomy. So Goomy's only good if you can retreat him, and if you can't retreat him, then they just stall your active, then they mill you, and that's their strategy. But Aerodactyl having free retreat makes that really difficult for them, so that's another really good matchup that I didn't even know was going to be a deck going into Worlds, but it's great because you play the Aerodactyl. Also playing 1 Slowking, so this is a tech for Reshizard. Slowking's water type. Psychic is the attack, so triple colorless or triple acceleration energy is the only thing you can attack with. 60 plus 20 more damage times the amount of energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So in order to be attacking you for big damage, Reshizard has got to have 4 energy attached. So they take a knockout, and then you're able to go Ditto Prism Star into Slowking. That's kind of why you play the 0-1. It's kind of a weird line, but one of the nice parts about Ditto is you can just evolve it into Beheeyem, put it back in the deck, and then use it for a Slowking later. Like your opponent doesn't even know that you have a Slowking in the deck, and you're just like, oh yeah, this Ditto's just going to evolve into a Beheeyem. And so they attack you with a Reshizard, and then you're like, psych, I play a Slowking, and now your Zard is dead. Because that can be a problematic thing. Rage, or Outrage rather, on Reshizard is pretty problematic because you have to 3-shot them, and they just like prize trade you really well for 2 energy. But just being able to say, hey, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to hit you once and then handle you with a Psychic is really, really nice. Okay, so getting into some of the trainer cards here. Starting off with 4 Mysterious Treasure. One of the best search cards in the deck. Discard a card from your hand, search your deck for a Psychic or Dragon Pokemon and put it in your hand. So it finds your whole Beheeyem line as well as Goomy. So that's pretty much all of those can search, but it is great. And also because you get to discard a card, the thinning aspect is also quite nice for Mysterious Treasure. You're also playing 4 Pokemon Communication. Lots of Pokemon search because you need to be looping those Beheeyem and you put them back into the deck. Oh, just dropped a card there. You put them back in the deck, so you need to be constantly searching them. So Pokemon Communication, great because you play so many Pokemon. There's I don't know what the count is, but I think it's over 20. So just being able to always change out a Pokemon for a different Pokemon that you need is great. Let's bring 3 Judge Whistle. So Judge Whistle is a really interesting card. So it says choose 1, draw a card, or put a Judge from your discard pile in your hand. So you do play 4 Judge in this deck because Judge item lock is very good. But also the reason that I played 3 of this card is because, you know, I had the idea of you want to get down to such as a low count in your deck, and you just don't really want to play. If you could play like 50 cards in this deck, you probably would, just because you don't want to have cards in your deck. As soon as you get down to that 0-card deck loop with Zebstrika Sprint that I was talking about earlier, you essentially win the game. It's not 100%, but like it's so much disruption and you get to attack so consistently that it's really, really hard for an opponent to come back once you're at that point. So a Judge Whistle is essentially a -1 card in deck because it just draws you a card if you don't want to get a Judge. Or if you want to get a Judge, you can also do that. So it adds to consistency in multiple ways. It's just a really good card in the deck. I will note this. There was a few times where I had to Judge Whistle and I prayed for triple acceleration energy, and there was a like honestly way too many hits of triple acceleration energy off of a Judge Whistle for one. So kind of clutch there as well. So you're playing 3 Skateboard. It's your main switching option in the deck. A Skateboard, the retreat cost of the Pokemon this card is attached to is 1 colorless, and it can retreat even if it's asleep or paralyzed. So that's great for Jirachi because Jirachi puts itself asleep. You can't retreat if you're asleep or paralyzed, obviously. But with a Skateboard, you're able to use that Stellar Wish ability, or Stellar Wish, and then retreat into a Beheeyem and attack in the same turn. So a Skateboard, really, really good card in the deck there as well. You're also playing 2 Karate Belt. So I didn't even mention this, but Aerodactyl GX has an attack. And this is just a straight Pikarom counter. Pikarom is one of the best decks in the format. It's really, really powerful, and you can't really let them do whatever they want. Like I was saying earlier, if you get disrupted, one of the main ways you can get disrupted is with a snipe. If your opponent is able to snipe, take out your Zebstrika, or snipe, take out a lone Elgyem, that's extremely bad for you, and it can maybe just mean you lose the game on the spot. So because of that, 2 of the main cards that do that are Alolan GX as well as Pikarom. Alolan is a super fine matchup. The main deck that's used in is Blounds, but Blounds is so free because you 2-shot Blounds and item lock them, and they play so many items that it's just a very good matchup. But Pikarom can get dicey if they accelerate to themselves and then start sniping your board just to disrupt you like that. So if they do that, they have to attack first. So they attack, they kill something, they go up on, they go down on prizes. So they have 5 and you have 6. Karate Belt becomes active. So Karate Belt says, if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, the attacks of this Pokemon this card is attached to cost 1 fighting less. So Aerodactyl has a GX attack called Wild Dive GX. It says this Pokemon does 50 damage times the amount of energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So even if they accelerate to a Alolan Raichu GX, which, you know, if they're a good player and they know what you're doing, they probably should be doing that. But sometimes Pikarom players got really greedy that I was playing, and they accelerated 3 onto themselves. I remember there's this Japanese player I was playing who did that. They accelerated 3 onto themselves, and then I was able to find a Karate Belt, Wild Dive, and I cleared all of the energy from their board. And once they lose all their energy, you have a couple turns to kind of get back into the Beheeyem loop that you want going on. And at that point, Pikarom just loses because they lost all the energy. You know, they don't get to use their Tapu Koko anymore, their Prism Star Tapu Koko. There's a bunch of cards that they have to manually attach for like 2 turns. And then you also can chuck the Aerodactyl active or the Goomy active to slow them down even more. So it's really, really hard for them to come back once you've killed a Pikarom. You're also playing 1 Adventure Bag. So Adventure Bag, search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon tool cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle your deck. Just great for finding Karate Belts and Skateboards. It's a pseudo 3rd belt as well as a 4th Skateboard, and it also thins 2 cards. You can get a Karate Belt and an Skateboard if you have an Aerodactyl out. Put it on there for later. Because you're item locking, they have no way to disrupt you in that way. And then it's just a great thin card. It thins 2 cards out of your deck, and you just always want to be thinning in this deck. You're also playing 1 Switch. Honestly, there was a reason that I put in Switch. It was a really long time ago that I built this list. It was like 4 years ago now. I don't remember the reason for Switch, so you might be able to cut it for a Skateboard, but there was a reason. I'll leave it in the comments if I remember the reason, but I actually don't really remember why there was a Switch in there. But there was a reason that it was there over a Skateboard. So yeah, 1 Switch, just being able to switch out of your Pokemon into other Pokemon is really good. Okay, so getting into the stadiums. You're playing 3 Pokemon Research Labs. Pokemon Research Labs says once during each player's turn, that player may search their deck for up to 2 Pokemon that evolve from unidentified fossil, which is your Aerodactyl GX, and then put those Pokemon onto their bench. So just being able to find 2 Aerodactyl is great. It's your promote attacker in a lot of matchups. Again, the free retreat is really good. Sometimes you want to be promoting Jirachi. One thing that I will mention with Pokemon Research Lab is oftentimes it's going to be only netting you 1 Aerodactyl GX, just because bench space is so important in this deck. You really want to have 2 Elgyem out at all times, especially against a deck that might be able to kill that in some way. So the bench management is really important. You also probably want a Jirachi and a Zebstrika. So that's 3 occupied if you have an Aerodactyl, a Jirachi, and a Zebstrika. And then your other 3 are probably going to be 2 Elgyem and then a Beheeyem that's attacking. And then you promote the Aerodactyl kind of thing. But just be really careful not overloading your bench, because sometimes getting 2 Aerodactyl GX is really incorrect depending on what your board looks like. Just opening 1 Lavender Town. I didn't play this at the DC Open, but I wish that I did, because it's such a good card in the deck. Once during each player's turn, that player might have their opponent reveal their hand. So with 3 Judge Whistle and 4 Judge that we're playing, you're almost always having the option to disrupt your opponent. So, you know, sometimes they might be building a hand, they might have something and they're just like, I'll just hold on to this for now, just in case, you know, I'll wait for the opportune turn. You could just play a Lavender Town and be like, I'm not going to let you build a hand of whatever you'd like to do. I'm going to see what you're doing. And then based on, you know, if you have a hand of 4 items and you're bluffing me that you have something going on, I'm just going to keep Beheeyem item locking you. But if you have like a supporter card or, you know, a Pokemon and some energy, I might disrupt that hand instead. So being able to know whether or not to judge your opponent is a really good aspect of the deck. And like I was saying, you play 4 Judge. So Judge, each player shuffles their hand to the deck and draws 4 cards. So it's great disruption, especially when a ton of the decks in this format play 30 items-ish, like 25 to 30 items. Half their deck is items. So if you can put them down to 4 cards and then also item lock them, not oftentimes, but a lot of the time, that can take them out of the game, which is really nice, depending on the matchup. It's pretty matchup specific, but like against Blounds or Reshizard or Pikarom, it can be really problematic for them to draw into a hand of a bunch of items and just not be able to do anything while you hit them for 90 and item lock every turn. Also playing 4 Cynthia, so it's just kind of staple in this format. Shuffle your hand to your deck, draw 6. It's Professor Oak's new theory. It's just really good. There's not a ton of great draw supporters in this format. Kind of one of the okay parts about this format is there's not a ton of great supporter consistency, but Cynthia is one of those supporter consistencies, so you do play 4 of them just because it's a good supporter card. You're also playing 4 Lillie. Lillie says draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. If it's your first turn, draw cards until you have 8 cards in your hand. So a great draw supporter turn 1 and an okay draw supporter for the rest of the game. Just good for, you know, finding other cards you have. And like I said, you have a bunch of cards that can be able to thin, like Mysterious Treasure or Pokemon Communication. You're putting stuff back or just burning cards. Like all of these cards are pretty much burnable, except for Communication if you don't have a Pokemon in your hand. So Lillie oftentimes is going to net you at least 4 cards, maybe even more if you have a really good hand to be able to play out. Just playing 3 triple acceleration energy. So it's the only energy you play in the deck. Everything attacks with it, except like everything that you can attack with attacks with it. The Slowking and the Beheeyem. Also, okay, that's not true. There has been opportunities to Boulder Crush with Aerodactyl GX because that's actually, I think I remember why the switch is in here now. So against Pikarom, something that they can do is they can attach 3 energy to a Raichu, Alolan Raichu GX, and then they can paralyze you. It does 80 plus 80 if they switched active, and paralyze if they switched active that turn. So they paralyze your Aerodactyl, which is problematic, but what you can do is Karate Belt for the fighting, and then triple acceleration energy for the double colorless energy, and Boulder Crush for 120 if you have the cards in your hand. Knocks out a Pikarom because Pikarom only has 240 HP, so you kill that for 3. Then they go paralyze. This is like a late game comeback. You have to let them take a couple prizes on you, and then your strategy is just to kill, sometimes depending on the board, just to kill 2 tag teams. They're gonna go paralyze with Alolan Raichu if they didn't accelerate 3. Like if they hit 3 to the Pikarom, you just win the game because you wild dive them. But if they do 3 to the Alolan Raichu and then they paralyze you, that can be problematic because then, you know, you don't get to use the Aerodactyl. But if you have switch, you can switch into something for retreat, switch back, and then wild dive the Alolan Raichu if you Boulder Crushed the Pikarom. So triple acceleration, actually good for Aerodactyl as well. Good thing that I remembered why the switch is in there. That is why the switch is in there, is for Alolan Raichu GX, because that paralyze can be really problematic. But yeah, so triple acceleration, you just play 4 because that's the only energy you can play. And honestly, it's kind of suspect. That's the only really kind of suspect part of the deck, is if you prize a couple of these, then you don't really have an engine if you can't find them. Like if you prize 2, it's really, really bad. But with Beheeyem's ability to put them back and you thin them, eventually once you get to the end of the game, you only really need 1. Yeah, so that's been Barrel Roll. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to get to them. And as always, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.